Hello again, fellow rogue tiers. After seeing the massive support from my last video and some very pointed comments, I decided of my own free will to make a blade guide. So let's get into it, shall we? Knowing that my audience has the retention of a 6-year-old on Adderall, I'm going to run through the Cliff Note version of a blade build and let y'all get to your, blading. So here it goes. For starters, you want to focus primarily on weapon damage for Blade, as almost none of her kit besides her alt fire matter when dealing damage. You want to focus primarily on crit as the most consistent way to guarantee a free run on Blade. Ideally, you want these relics in a run, but these relics can also serve the same niche if you can't find what you're looking for. Look for these specific potentials and have fun. Alright, now that all the hyperactive iPad kids are out of here, let's get into what makes a good blade, starting with her abilities. I'll start with Blade's passive and work our way through her abilities, ending with her ultimate. Then after, I want to quickly go over her different weapons as they really matter on Blade. Starting with Blade's passive. Primary skill Blade of Destiny and ultimate skill Thrill of the Hunt reduce the cooldown of the minor skill Shadow Sprint upon dealing damage. Basically, this boils down to whenever you deal damage with your primary or ultimate skills, you can get some of the minor skills cooldown reduced. To be perfectly honest with you, this isn't actually that important, as it really only helps in niche scenarios where a perk that is activated off your minor skill is your main damage. That being said, let's jump over to Blade's primary skill, Blade of Destiny. Unleash a Blade Blast forward that can chain up to 3 times. Upon using this skill, you basically shoot a piercing wave projectile that does minimal damage, and seeing as this move stalls your movement upon activation, this skill tends to just get you hurt more often than it helps. Blade's minor skill, on the other hand, is a whole different story, as Shadow Sprint is the Blade's minor skill, on the other hand, is a whole different story, as Shadow Sprint is the bread and butter of any Blade mains in run survival. Shadow Sprint. Charge forward, dealing area damage to enemies along the way. Blade is untargetable and immune to damage during this attack. If you didn't catch that, this is one of the few instances in the game where you're able to get full immunity to damage. Because of it, it means that some attacks that might have been scary are now just quick time events to Blade, as you gotta time the dodge through the attack to make sure that it's no longer a threat to you. This means that the skill is both your engage ability and your way to get out of a deadly situation, so mastering this skill's timing is crucial to balancing damage and survivability. Okay, let's finish off this section by talking about Blade's ultimate, Thrill of the Hunt. Slash at 5 random enemies within range, then sheath the sword, dealing area damage to all enemies within range. Blade is untargetable and immune to damage during this attack. Once again, this is one of the very few moves in the game that has absolute damage immunity, meaning that this could be used as both a damage source and a get out of jail free card, and seeing as each hit of the ultimate reduces the cooldown of your other immunity skill, it allows you to fully recharge your minor skill and immediately dash out of danger if you're still in it after you use your ultimate. We honestly won't use Blade's ultimate much for damage, as it doesn't really do much when running a weapon-based build, but having it as that get out of jail free card is always incredibly useful when you need it. Okay, enough with her abilities. Let's talk about what makes Blade so strong. Her weapons. Starting with Blade's default weapon, Trust. This weapon is an absolute monster, sporting a nasty 150% crit damage and 200% weak multiplier, some of the highest a weapon has in this game. Of course, that isn't why this weapon is strong at all. That crown would go to potentially the strongest alt fire ability in the game. Sporting a simple title of Strike, this weapon's alt fire reads as follows. Perform a melee strike, dealing 9.8 weapon power as weapon damage twice. Reactivating it within a short time unleashes the power of a strike, dealing 49 times weapon power as weapon damage twice. On hit, the powerful strike restores 100% weapon power as health and grants the same amount as temporary shields. We aren't even done, as this weapon's passive, Haste, states that landing any damage from Blade's kit will refund you 10% of Slash's cooldown. I genuinely have no goddamn clue what the dev team were smoking when designing this weapon, as just having the damage portion would have been enough for high skilled players to run absolutely wild with this weapon. But adding free healing and temporary shieldings gives this weapon such a low skill ceiling that your Nan could pick it up and nuke Jory with it. I'm sorry. Even as a Blade main, I'm still shocked that this shit made it to live servers. This weapon will be the one you run on any weapon damage based build on Blade, as it's just too damn good to pass on. So trust is absolute insanity, but that doesn't mean that Blade's other weapons don't have their uses too. So let's move on to Blade's next weapon, Heartfelt. Heartfelt is a relatively interesting weapon, as while it may not be as insane as Trustifer will be, it has a much more interesting gimmick with its alt fire, Hunt. Hunt is as follows. Dash to the target location while invulnerable. Oh god, they gave her another invulnerable move. Okay, at the starting point, create a phantom that fires 7 tracking bullets at the enemy, each dealing 5 times weapon power as weapon damage. Heartfelt's passive, named Chase, also gives you an extra use of your minor skill, meaning you have more invulnerability. I think it goes without saying that any weapon-based build you want to try on Blade should always be done with this weapon, as it just gives you so many more free movement options, making one of the most mobile characters in this game even more mobile. The last weapon for Blade sucks. I would explain what it does, but honestly, it's so bad that it isn't even really worth your time to try to get or use. Don't believe me? Go ahead, try to get it yourself and use it. While you do that, me and every other normal person will move on to our next section, how to build Blade inside of a run. Right from the beginning of a run, in most game modes you are presented with an option of different perks you can grab to start your run off with a bang. Here, we really only want one combination of perks, and that would be the Crit Start. This will perfectly build off any weapon damage based build, offering both consistent and high amounts of damage. You could alternatively try to go with a Wealth Start, but you need to have a general understanding of good management of economy during a run to have a potential of hitting bigger numbers than the crit build, and honestly, that lack of consistency isn't really worth the risk. If you want to go for it, be my guest. I hope you're able to hit the insanely high damage ceiling that build provides. However, I value consistency in every run. Boring? Maybe, but it works and I'm sticking to it. Throughout the run, you will try and look for the passive perks, Transform Luck, Blessed Mark, Surprise Bonus, Lucky Weapon, and Break a Leg. These are the best ways to guarantee a good mix of both crit rate and crit damage to really go consistently big numbers. We do also have 2 fantastic duo boons that pair really well with this build, those being Thunder Burst, which I would recommend trying to get either Thunder Strike or Lightning Fast to activate, and Deadly Chill, which I would recommend either Cold Shoulder or Freeze Frame to activate. These both provide pretty useful boosts in mainly crit damage through a run. Seeing as you are going to get other Arbiters during the run, it can't hurt to try to pick up a skill perk in order to try to get one of these duo boons. This brings us to what relics are good to run paired with this build. For starters, you want to find one of 2 things in a relic set. This is either weapon damage or multiplicative damage. Admittedly, multiplicative damage is the much better stat to look for, so 6-piece relic sets, such as 6-piece Divine Blade set with its 150% damage increase to enemies within 8 meters, which is not an issue with melee blade builds, or 6-piece Game Console set with its 150% damage to elite monsters and boss enemies are both fantastic options. While Lucky Cat can be very good, I found that it's inconsistent for similar reasons that Arbiter of Wealth starts are inconsistent, so I would shy away from Lucky Cat unless you are very good with econ management in a run. A 6-piece medkit is also okay to run when you have a more formed module build outside of runs, but seeing that most of your raw stats will be in shields rather than health, simply due to the nature of running more orange modules than blue for that sweet weapon power, it might struggle to help you with the bonuses outside of runs. For similar reasons, running shields can actually be a really good relic set, seeing that you have so many shields because you are running orange and red modules. For the remaining 2 slots, I would recommend either 2-piece timer or 2-piece boot sets, as they give you both 20% weapon power, and boots also give a nice boost in movement speed. Finally, we have to cover your best options in potentials. Obvious ones like Nova Strike being really good for crit builds, and amped weapons being straight up ×2 damage boosts for weapon damage. There's also some fairly interesting ones that can really help bring a well-rounded build together. One of the more interesting ones I've seen is Energy Blast. This potential gives you up to plus 200% more damage given your ability to keep stacks up consistently. It's a nice boost in damage when you're using a skill that you're basically going to be using off cooldown anyways. Other super interesting potential I've seen used is Rapid Reload. On the surface, this one might seem a little gimmicky, as its main face value is brainlessly spamming your reload perk at the cost of being able to use your primary fire. And while honestly you're right about the flexibility of this potential, it allows us to make use of some damage boosting reload perks such as Ethical Wealth or Enduring Uplift to add another layer of damage stacking throughout the run. The only downside of this is if you fight the Snake in Ring City, you're in for a bad time. Finally, I wanted to talk about probably the most broken potential for this build. That would be the glorious, the beautiful Emergency Reserve. This allows you the ability to spam Splash way more than you ever could with any other build, which means more damage, more healing, and more temporary shielding. If you're ever feeling lost about how to make a build for a character, I would encourage you to check out the leaderboards, as the best way to learn is from the best. In fact, I'm sure if we check the leaderboards right now, we could see all the pros displaying all the tips I've shared in this video at the highest of gameplay, and what the fuck is that? Okay, take literally everything I've said this video and throw it out the window, because it's time to sell your morality, enjoyment, and soul to the meta devil. This is the build, the one that works on every single goddamn character and is the fastest way to beat the game. We are giving up on weapon damage entirely, and the crit perks no longer apply, leaning full into a skill damage, skill crit rate, and skill crit damage build. This is literally all we care about in out of run progression. In a run, however, is where things start to get a little spicy. We take the Arbiter of Music start, not for the weapon perk this time, but for the dodge perk, Speed of Sound. This will allow us to clear enemies all around us in a range that is honestly way too big, and the perk sadly does a lot of damage. You literally just spam dodge off cooldown at enemies until they die. There is only one more passive perk that you need for a run, and that is Echo Shock. To be entirely honest, I'm not entirely sure why this passive perk does so much damage, but it really does do a shitload of damage to bosses. If you can try to get Security's duo boon Rapid Beat, which just gives you an extra 200% damage for your Arbiter of Music perks, it's really good. For relics, you really only want 6-piece axes, as the 150% damage boost to your skill damage and 2-piece battery, scope, or amplifier sets would just give you more skill damage. If you're incredibly lucky, this will only take you 7 out of your 8 slots, which you can fill, if your luck is beyond insane, with the Drone Legendary that boosts your perk damage by another 60%. Or if God himself blesses your run, the Heart Amplifier that gives you a plus 100% damage boost to your Arbiter of Music perks. I would tell you exactly what those items are called, but for some reason Pew Pew hasn't given us a way to see items out of a run. For potentials, you have 3 insane options and 1 Blade specific option. Those would be Arbiter Power for an insane 3 times damage perk potentials if you only have Arbiter of Music perk active, Shadow Evasion for more dashes, which equals more damage, and Skill Amplification, which just gives you straight up ×2 skill damage. Finally, the Blade specific potential would be, again, Energy Blast, because that plus 200% damage also applies to your perk damage as well. I'll be totally honest with you in saying, I hate this build. I don't find it very fun. It's undeniably strong and clears way faster than the weapon build, and that kind of hurts. I hope you all enjoyed this video, as it's my first time ever really making a guide style video, so I really didn't know what I was doing. If you found this video helpful, please consider leaving a like or a sub to let me know that I should keep making content for this game. Comment what character you think I should make a guide for next, and I hope to catch you all in the next video. Peace.